Hey, what's up guys? It's another Truth Talk Thursday, and today I am doing our second part of the husband and wife Q&A. If you guys didn't see the first one, definitely check it out. And if you don't know this person next to me, his name is Jose and he's my husband.
Hi guys.
So we have the rest of the questions that we are going to go through, and let's do it. The first question says, I struggle in seeing marriage as a gift from God. So many people I know have gotten divorced, and it's easy to see the struggle and the pain and not see marriage as both struggle and blessing. How do you keep strong in your marriage and staying in love, if that makes sense?
Suffering is a gift from God, and that makes marriage sound terrible, but sometimes suffering is a gift from God, and I really mean that. And marriage is going to give you some of the best times of your entire life and some of the hardest times of your entire life. And both of those are really good. Both of those are holy. It's a result that we live in a broken, fallen world. Like even marriage itself, the whole purpose of marriage is to point us to the cross. So if we didn't live in a fallen world, if we were still with God, we actually wouldn't need marriage.
Mm-hmm.
So all that to say is that marriage is a beautiful, amazing, difficult thing that yes, you're going to see a lot of people fail at. You're going to see a lot of people not do well. But there's just as many, if not more, people who are out there in really, really good, God-honoring, just fulfilling, loving, fruit-bearing marriages. They're still hard. They're still hard moments, right? So as you approach marriage, like realize that, like if the purpose of marriage is to honor God, if the purpose of marriage is to point each other to the cross, it's not always going to be easy, right? And it's about how you handle it. I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, I was going to say, in terms of the handling it, you actually ended at a really great point. I was going to say transparency is so huge. Correct me if I'm wrong. A lot of the times when you see, marriages have issues or falter or, something along those lines, a lot of the times I would say it comes from a place of a lack of transparency. And, I think sometimes we forget when we go into marriage is that it is two sinners coming together. It's not two perfect people. It's not two people or one person who's perfect and the other person who's a sinner. It is two sinners coming together. And if there isn't a place of vulnerability and transparency, if those things can't exist, it is going to make marriage incredibly difficult.
And kind of going off of that, yes, it's two sinners coming together. So asking how can marriage be good if it can be so hard and so messy and so difficult is like saying, how can life be good if it's so hard and so messy and difficult? How can God be good if he lets these hard, messy, difficult things happen? Marriage is just part of that. It's part of God's work. And I think the next question is probably what's already on your guys' mind. So the next question is it worth it? I think I know one woman in my entire life who is consistently happy in her marriage post-honeymoon phase. Everyone else talks about marriage like bondage, heartache, and being let down. I hear on the daily how regretful every woman I know of is of getting married, and most of them are Christians. Also, how do you truly stay committed? Everyone seems to have affairs nowadays. Marriage is just painted in a horrible light, in my opinion. Kind of at the end of that, yes, marriage is painted in a horrible light in our culture because it's hard. It requires dying to self. It requires you not being the reason for the marriage. It requires you not to be your own God. And so of course it's going to be painted in a bad light. Mm-hmm. The short answer of is it worth it? Yes, absolutely. And we'll explain why. He said, I know one woman in my entire life who's consistently happy in her marriage post-honeymoon phase. Everyone else talks about marriage like bondage, heartache, and being let down. Can marriage be difficult? Yes, absolutely. Can marriage be absolutely joyful? Yes. It's hard sometimes, guys. We carry, past relationship baggage, family baggage. There's a lot of stuff to work through, but it's in that process of working through stuff together that we've grown together and have built this wonderful, amazing friendship. And I'm painting this picture of marriage being terrible. It's not. it's awesome. It's amazing. Like, Melanie is my best friend, and I have way more fun with her than anyone else, and she knows me like nobody else, and it's amazing that I can be vulnerable with her, that I can be accepted, and I don't get rejected. There's so many wonderful, amazing, beautiful things about marriage besides the physical intimacy. But this and the last question are all saying, why are marriages so bad? Why do I know so many people that are suffering in their marriages, even though they call themselves Christians, right? And this is kind of a deeper question, really. It's how can you be a Christian? How can you call yourself a Christian and still live out these sins and still live in these ways? And so I would tell you, one, just because someone claims the name of Christ doesn't necessarily mean that they know Christ, right? In the Bible, it says that Jesus said, many of you will call to me and say, Father, Father, and I will say, no, get away from me, from I did not know you. And that's in a couple different Gospels if you want to go look it up. But it's amazing that Jesus himself knew there are people who are going to say, oh, I love Jesus. I know Jesus. Oh, Father, I did all these things in your name. And he'll go, no, you didn't. I didn't know you, right?
That's a scary verse.
It's a very scary verse, and it's a very heavy thing. So I would process it more along the lines of if I see someone who calls himself a Christian and their fruit does not show that, right? That's something to think about. And that's a whole other topic that maybe Melanie can cover on another Thursday of what does it mean to have fruit as a believer? How do faith and works interact, right? It's kind of a bigger question. But I would say, listen, in your marriage, it's two sinners, and it's going to take work to do it well.
Yeah.
And if you do it well, and if you do it in a God-honoring way, whether it's easy or hard on that particular day, whether it's super fun or super messy on that particular day, it is way more rewarding than anything else that you could do. Like, having a messy, argumentative day with her is way better than looking at pornography, is way better than having an affair, is way better than anything else. It's better than a few drinks out with the boys. Like, and yeah, like, that's the thing. Like, this is so good. It's even on its hardest days, I wouldn't trade it for the world. And part of that has to do with picking the right person.
Yeah, I was actually going to touch on that because in the previous video you talked about a lot of the 5 reasons for marriage.
Yes.
And so what I was going to say is if you if you didn't see our first video, go watch it because then you'll understand the referencing. But the 5 reasons of marriage that Jose was talking about in our last video really are huge. They're monumental in the process of getting to know someone and choosing a spouse. I sometimes think about some of the marriages that I have seen fail, or they go through a lot of hardships, and a lot of the times I kind of ask myself, how many of those 5 things do you actually have that you actually pursue? Whether it's gardening, which is calling. Like, the reason why Jose and I, you guys don't know us that well, but we don't have many things in common.
No. Like, we like different music, different food, different everything.
Different everything.
On paper,
we are polar opposites. Like, on paper, you would look at us and say, how are these people married? Like, how do they love each other? Because they're so different. And for us, what really pulled us together was the fact that we wanted to pursue ministry. It was our love for Jesus. And I mean, guys, we've seen the ugly in each other. And that was before marriage. Like, we saw the bad, we saw the ugly, we saw hard moments, and we choose one another anyways. Like, guys, something that drives me crazy in our culture is that, everybody says, oh, love is this feeling that you need to pursue, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no. Love is a choice, and it is a commitment that you choose every single day in multiple moments of your day, because this is difficult. It is hard. And, you know, kind of, I went on a tangent a little bit there, but kind of going back to the five or the five, you know, matches in terms of marriage that we talked about in our previous video, you know, I would really, you know, when you are pursuing a marriage, a healthy marriage, I would really go to those 5 things that John Mark Comer found in Genesis and make sure that you guys align on those things, because those are the big things that come up in marriage. You have to have similar callings, you have to have a friendship.
And to be fair, if you're already married and you don't have those 5 things, it's not that your marriage is going to fail. It's going to be harder.
Thank you for covering that.
It's going to require more dying to self. So while Melanie and I have those 5 things in common, the areas we have to die to self are different. So if you have the 5 things in common, and let's say Melanie and I both, we're okay with traveling, we're okay with going where God leads, I don't care, you know, we'll move, right? Whereas if you have, maybe you have a couple who, one person feels called to be here and the other person feels called to go on missions. No matter what they do, it's going to require one of them to die to self on that particular item, which can totally be done. So to kind of wrap up the question, marriage, yes, it can be brutally difficult. If you are a Christian, God will use it to shape you, and marriage will be this thing that no matter how brutally difficult it gets, no matter how mean you can be or terrible you can be or whatever you can be, your spouse will not reject you, right? And the other way, no, this person that you love so dearly, that you're so committed to, right? No matter what they do, you're still committed to them, right? So that is what a covenant is, and our culture doesn't have a very good idea of what a covenant is. And so
Can I just say one quick thing? I just want to also encourage you guys that if you come from a family background where there has been broken marriages, can I just encourage you that if you believe that because you have had that in your past, whether it's your parents or another guardian, whatever, if you have believed the lie that you cannot have a healthy, flourishing marriage, can I just say can I just call it what it is? It's a lie. It is a lie from the enemy, and I pray that if that is something that you are hearing, if that's a voice that you're hearing, that you allow that to surface, you work through that, because that is just so not true.
Absolutely. So on to the next question.
So the next question is, so boundaries are important in a relationship. How do you bring those up to a newer relationship? Over the nachos, during that kiss scene in the movie, do you whisper, by the way, I don't want to do that till we get married, so...
I love this question.
I know,
love
whoever wrote
this question. Thank you.
is so good.
Thank you for making my day. So yes, boundaries are absolutely important, and you should lead with them. I mean, not like when you meet the person, like, hello, I'm Jose, and I don't want to have sex until I get married. No, that's not what I'm saying. But I'm going to assume that if a boy is pursuing you or you're pursuing a boy, that you pursued a friendship first, right? And so either in a group setting, or through a series of coffee type dates, right? Like we're young adults or we're in high school, we can meet at Starbucks, we can chat, we can talk and get to know one another. And so you can bring up like, hey, I love Jesus, you know, and you don't have to say it that way. You can be like, yeah, I'm a Christian and I'm part of church, and you know, like, this is what I think about blank, right? Whether it's relationships or whatever, right? You're going to talk about those things. So I would say, wear your faith on your sleeve.
Yeah.
Like, seriously, the most attractive thing for a healthy, God-honoring guy, like the type that you'd want to be with, is a girl who's a healthy, God-honoring girl. Like, I can't tell you how much whoever you date says about you, right? So if you constantly find yourself dating these bad boy troublemakers, that says something about you, of why am I attracted to that? I need to work through that,
that's
right?
That's a hard truth.
Yeah.
Like, the person that you are attracted to is a reflection of you. And that's pretty, like, I think back to me in high school. I think you can say the same thing. We think back in hindsight of who we were in high school and who we were attracted to, and it's like, ooh, like, God, thank you, Jesus, for doing a work in me.
So what I would say is, so kind of going back full circle. So if you are seeking God and you're going after Him, that's great. That's going to attract guys who are seeking God and going after Him. If for some reason that's not happening, right? Whether, the enemy's sending somebody your way or whatever it might be, right? Wear it on your sleeve. Be honest about it, because Jesus isn't attractive to the world, right? So if you, on the first or second coffee date, just talk about how you're pursuing God and you're part of community and, you're a big believer in pursuing marriage and a relationship, and in doing that well means healthy boundaries when it comes to physical intimacy, and the dude gets turned off, then so be it, right? Like, you dodged a bullet, right? Yeah. So yeah, just wear it on your sleeve, and you seem like you have a really good sense of humor, so I would definitely use that to your advantage. But yeah, it's that simple.
Mm-hmm.
So the last question is, I know that intimacy is super important, and it is also super important that it is consensual, even in marriage, and very communicative of comfort and desires. How does that even work? Is it like asking if the other person wants to go out and eat? Super awkward question, I know, but it can be answered. But if it can be answered in an open forum, I'd like to know. I'm gonna give that a shot.
Okay.
So the next question is, I know that intimacy is super important, and it is also super important that it is consensual even in marriage, and very communicative of comfort and desires. How does that even work? Is it like asking if the other person wants to go out and eat? Super awkward question, I know, but if it can be answered in an open forum, I'd love to know. This is a great question. No, and this is the kind of stuff that a lot of people don't tell you and don't talk about before you're married.
Yeah. I feel like even married people don't really touch on this.
It depends. I have some friends that don't talk about it.
You have to have a pretty deep relationship with that person to be able to go that far.
Yeah, so we're going to trust you. So yes, intimacy is super important, but let me just say, it's not as important as you think it is. And I mean physical intimacy. So one of the things that I realized being in marriage is that I used to think as physical intimacy is like, oh my God, this is going to be the best, greatest part of marriage. Is it awesome? Is it fantastic? Yes. Is it the sundae? No. It is the cherry on top of the sundae.
Oh, okay.
It is like the intimacy between us, like the commitment and the love and the friendship is awesome, and it is great, and it's what, answering the other questions, it's what keeps us in there when things are really, really hard. And the physical intimacy, it's a great litmus test of where that other stuff is at. If we're not feeling together, if we're not being together, there's not a lot of physical intimacy. If we're talking and communicating and really being vulnerable with one another, there's more physical intimacy. So it's the cherry on top. It's a spiritual, physical, emotional moment, right? That requires all those things to really be present, and it's just so satisfying. And I said this earlier. So wherever our physical intimacy is at, it is so much better than the counterfeit that pornography and that affairs and that anything else has to offer. Because that stuff just doesn't last. This is permanent. It's real.
There's something about being one flesh. Like when you get married, there literally is a switch that turns. It has to be spiritual, because one flesh becomes something so much more than I could have anticipated, being a single person who didn't, obviously wasn't married and didn't have that experience or, whatever. So, I really like what you said about the litmus test. That's so good. I think that's definitely a key thing that I would mention.
So in terms of consent and communication and desires, it's a journey you're going to go through together. Yeah. You have to work it out together, and you have to go at the pace of each other as best you can. And so that might be the man needing to slow his roll, right? And go at the pace that the woman is going to be comfortable at. Sometimes that might be flipped. It can happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a journey. It's a journey that you go together. And so it's really, really easy to do, believe it or not, to be vulnerable in those ways when you're already being vulnerable in other areas in your marriage. With your emotions and with your day-to-day, it doesn't seem that difficult to be like, hey, I feel comfortable to try this, or I don't feel comfortable to try this. So yeah, it's a journey you're going to go through together. There is no, here's the pace you need to get to be healthy. There is no, definition of this is what's healthy for every marriage. Every marriage is a little different, right? I think of the case, what if you have somebody who's got a physical disability?
Mm-hmm.
Their physical intimacy is going to look way different than a marriage that doesn't, right? And so that's something you work out with your spouse step by step as you go. You do fall into, You can follow that into kind of a routine, right? But that's what the whole pursuing your husband, pursuing your wife is about, falling out of that routine. And that kind of goes into the next point. And like, is it like asking if the other person wants to go out and eat? Honestly, sometimes it can be. Sometimes, I'm the romantic, right? And so I'll try to make sure I bring flowers, I'm trying to pursue her. I'm very classical that way.
Yeah.
Again, it's different for every couple.
Right.
It's my job to pursue her in that way. It's my job to put the energy into doing that, right? Because I'm a man and I'm come home and I'm tired and, I'm not really one for sports, right? But the joke is that you just want to sit down and watch sports because that's easy. It's work to pursue her. This is why for men, right, something like porn or an affair or whatever else is so enticing because it's no work.
Yeah.
It's no work. It's just there. It's available. It's work, but that's what makes it so good because it's real and it's deep. Anything you want to add?
Yeah, I was just going to say, a lot of these kind of conversations should definitely happen. Like, I think there's a good place where these conversations should happen, and I think this one should definitely be taking place in a engaged setting or when you are married. And then I feel like this is probably if you were to have this conversation while you're dating, I think that may be a little too much. That's something that you should probably observe, and you should get to know that person, while you're dating and in a friendship, and there will be key things that will show if having intimacy that is consensual. I think those signs will come up very quickly if that is something that will be honored while you're dating. But the actual conversation of that, I think, is a very intimate thing, and definitely should happen in the process of premarital counseling if you're engaged, and obviously openly if you are in marriage. So just to touch on that really quick.
And again, like I said earlier, wear your faith on your sleeve. Like let these guys know what you're about.
Mm-hmm.
I love the saying. It's like that a man should have to go through Jesus to get to his daughter, right? So he needs to pursue God to show that he is worthy of having the responsibility of being married to a woman of God. And you're gonna walk through that. A couple last points. One, please don't think that our marriage is perfect.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah.
We argued right before filming this.
Yeah, don't idolize us, please.
And I mean that. We've just grown along the way, and we learned a lot along the way, and we're happy to share it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, also don't think it's terrible. It's good. I love it. I don't want anything else. But yeah, that's the reality. Marriage is going to show you a little bit of heaven. It's going to show you a little bit of hell. That's actually what we were told when we were premarital counseling. Yes. Yeah. And then the second point is we love sharing what we've learned so much that we're actually starting a podcast.
Yeah.
Long story short, we have been in young adult ministry for a little while, and we are trying to take what we've learned, trying to take what we keep hearing that our fellow young adults want, and to put our voices out there to give people more knowledge about this kind of stuff. It's called the Rooted Podcast, and you can find out more about it if you go to www.rootedblog.org. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys. See you next time.